As Kate Moody's here, confusion reigns in Washington over the possibility of more stimulus. Kate, clarify it for us.
Well, Mark, everyone seems to agree that they do need some more stimulus, but how to go about it remains very unclear, and it changes from hour to hour after Donald Trump called off bipartisan negotiations on Tuesday, but then he backtracked and floated support for individual targeted aid, possibly before the election. Now, this Thursday, he's told Fox Business that he sees, quote, a really good chance of reaching a deal with the Democrats. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, meanwhile, dashed hopes for a specific bailout for the airline industry, which has begun major layoffs over the past week. The Democratic Congresswoman said she would not support a standalone bill without a broader package to help small businesses and households.
We're happy to review what that standalone bill would look like as part of a bigger bill, if there is a bigger bill. But there is no standalone bill.
Well, underscoring the fragility of America's economic recovery, the number of new applications for unemployment benefits remained higher than analysts had expected last week. 840,000 new claims were recorded. That's slightly higher than the previous week. The numbers remain well above the pre-pandemic record of 695,000 in a single week. They're also significantly higher than they were during the previous recessions. Most economists agree that the summer spike in hiring has now cooled, and they warn that businesses may not be ready to employ more people until they're assured of more financial support. Additional unemployment benefits and a direct stimulus check are among the measures being discussed on Capitol Hill. The overall unemployment rate fell to 7.9% in September, but that data didn't include those who have simply stopped looking for work or the tens of thousands laid off over the last week by the likes of Disney and United and American Airlines. Let's check in on the day's trading action now. Wall Street gave up some of its earlier stronger gains after Pelosi's comments. We still managed a positive close, though, gains of between about 0.5 and 0.8 of a percentage point there. U.S. investors have been particularly tuned into the ins and outs of the stimulus talks in Washington. The major European indices closed higher. The DAX outperformed after data showed that German exports had risen for the fourth month in a row. Well, the French government is expanding its financial support for businesses affected by the coronavirus pandemic. The so-called Solidarity Fund had been opened to the hospitality, culture, sports, and events sectors, but it'll now be extended to include others who are struggling, including florists, booksellers, printers, and photographers. It means over 225,000 businesses will now be eligible to receive up to €10,000 a month. The worst affected sectors will also benefit from more generous state-sponsored furlough payments, covering all, not just 85%, of workers' salaries.
Toutes les entreprises des secteurs du tourisme, de l'événementiel, de la culture, du sport pourront bénéficier d'une prise en charge du chômage partiel par l'État à 100%, avec zéro reste à charge pour l'entreprise jusqu'à la fin de l'année 2020.
A French court has told Google it must begin talks with news organizations about paying them for their content. The tech company had challenged a ruling by the French Competition Authority that it must negotiate with publishers over payments for showing their material. The Paris Court of Appeal has upheld that order, though, as Claire Rush explains.
It's the latest turn in a long-running dispute between Google and French media groups. On Thursday, a French appeals court ruled that Google must open negotiations with publishers in France about paying to use their content. The ruling compels Google to sit down with publishers and news agencies to find a way to compensate them under the so-called neighboring right, enshrined in the EU's revamped copyright rules. The neighboring right allows news companies to demand payment when search engines display snippets of their stories.
Donc on peut espérer que ces négociations déboucheront sur un ou des accords dans le cadre clair des droits voisins, ce qui serait une avancée très importante puisque jusqu'ici, Google avait toujours refusé une rémunération spécifique aux droits voisins.
Google had argued it shouldn't have to pay because news companies benefit from the millions of readers it sends to their websites. But after Thursday's ruling, the tech giant said in a statement that its priority is to reach an agreement with French publishers and press agencies, and that it will now review the appeal court's decision. Many news outlets have long criticized Google for failing to give them a cut of the millions it makes from ads displayed alongside news search results. Facing growing pressure internationally, Google's parent company last week announced it would invest $1 billion in partnerships with global news publishers to develop a platform highlighting their reporting.
And a story we'll be hearing much more about in the coming weeks, Mark.
Kate, thank you very much indeed. Kate with the business.